So how does someone go from literally hoping they don't wake up in the morning to building a $100 million empire? Today we're going to break down the story of Alex Hormozi. And let me tell you, this is not your typical success story. It's a journey from a peak that felt more like a prison, through a failure so total it left him with just $1,000, to discovering the mental models that changed absolutely everything.
This quote, this is really where the story starts. Not at the top, but at the absolute emotional bottom. It's a shocking thing to hear from someone who, by all outside measures, already had it made. So how does a person who looks like he's won the game end up feeling like this? Let's get into it.
Hormozi actually has a name for this, his rock top moment. You know, he'd achieved everything society tells you that you're supposed to want. The job, the money, the status. But he found himself standing at the peak of a mountain he never even chose to climb, realizing the only thing waiting for him was a long, lonely fall into misery.
So picture this. He's just 22 years old, he's got a high-paying consulting job as a defense contractor, he's got a nice condo, but this whole life, this entire reality, was built on one thing and one thing only: trying to get his father's approval. He was living someone else's dream, and it was costing him his own will to live.
And this right here, this just lays the conflict bare. On one side, you've got his dad's dream, the stable, prestigious path of a doctor or a consultant with a fancy Harvard MBA. And on the other side, Hormozi's dream, the messy, uncertain, risky path of starting a business, getting into fitness, and just being his own person. He had to make a really stark choice. He had to let his father's dream for him die so that his own dream could finally have a chance to live.
So he did it. He took the leap. He quit his job, packed his car, and drove to California to open his first gym. But the path to his own dream? It was anything but smooth. In fact, it led to a series of just catastrophic failures that would test him to his absolute limit.
And here's just how fast things fell apart. First, he successfully builds and then sells 6 gyms. Pretty amazing, right? And he puts all that money into a new partnership. What happens next? His business partner literally steals every single dollar from the bank account. But okay, he recovers, pulls off this massive $100,000 launch, only for the payment processor to freeze all the funds for 6 months. I mean, can you imagine? Just one gut punch right after another.
By December of 2016, this was it. $1,000. That's all he had left to his name. He was living in his girlfriend Layla's parents' house, having lost everything. In fact, he had just paid out his last $22,000 in sales commissions, leaving him with just that $1,000 sitting in his bank account.
So he's at his absolute lowest. He tells Layla, "You should leave me, I'm a sinking ship." And her response? It changed everything. She looked him right in the eye and said this, that unwavering belief. You know, that was the one thing he had left, and it was enough to convince him to keep going. Okay, so with that support and with literally nothing left to lose, Hormozi went all in on his final idea, a gym turnaround business. But wouldn't you know it, he immediately ran into a fatal flaw in his business model. But here's the crazy part. That flaw is what led him to his single biggest breakthrough. So here's this vicious cycle he was trapped in. He'd go into a gym, work his magic, sell a ton of new memberships, and take his fee. Sounds good, right? Well, after he left, some of the gym owners would tell the new members, "Hey, just get a refund from that guy and pay me directly at a discount." So the more he sold, the more money he ended up owing in refunds. His own success was literally bankrupting him.
He's desperate, about to shut it all down, when a gym owner he'd turned down before calls him, begging. But instead of flying out, the owner asks if he could just buy the system. Hormozi, thinking he was getting out of the business anyway, just throws out a high number, $6,000. The guy says yes instantly. So he makes a few more calls, raising the price each time, and at the end of the day, he's made $60,000 in licensing sales. He wasn't selling a service anymore. He was selling information.
This massive pivot forced him to really sit down and figure out what made his system so valuable in the first place. He realized it wasn't just about the selling, it was about creating an irresistible offer. And that's when he developed a framework he calls the value equation, designed to systematically build an offer that people just can't say no to.
And this right here is the crucial framework, the value equation. Think of value like a fraction. On the top of the fraction, the part you want to make as big as possible, you've got 2 things, the customer's dream outcome and their perceived likelihood of achievement. So what's their ultimate goal and how confident are you making them that they'll get there? Then on the bottom of the fraction, the part you want to shrink to basically 0, are time delay and effort and sacrifice. How long will it take and how hard will it be?
The genius is in its simplicity. To create an irresistible offer, you just have to relentlessly increase the top and decrease the bottom.
But look, an equation is useless if you can't actually execute on it, right? This brings us to another one of Hormozi's core concepts, skill stacking. It's this idea that you don't need to be the absolute best in the world at one thing. You just need to be good enough at several things that combine in a really powerful way. So let's just walk through this example. Step 1. You start with a base skill. Let's say you're good at math. That's solid, but it's not super easy to monetize on its own. Step 2. You add a business application, like learning bookkeeping. Okay, now you've got a service. Step 3. You layer on specialized knowledge, like studying tax law. Now you're a valuable expert. Then, Step 4. You add a high-leverage skill, like learning how to sell. All of a sudden, you've transformed from just an accountant into a rainmaker.
And that's the real magic of it. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 here, it equals 5. Each new skill doesn't just add your abilities, it multiplies the value of everything else you already know. You end up creating this unique combination that nobody else really has.
So, after selling his companies for almost $50 million, what game is Hormozi playing now? Well, he sees business not as something to be won, but as a game that literally never ends.
With his firm Acquisition.com, his whole mission now is to make business knowledge accessible to everybody. He gives away almost all his content, his courses, his books, his frameworks, for free or at cost. The whole goal is to provide so much value up front that the right business owners will eventually seek him out as an investor.
And this perfectly captures his philosophy. Too many people treat business, or health, or even marriage like a finite game, something that has a clear finish line, where someone wins and someone loses. But they're infinite games. You don't win at business. The whole point is to keep playing, to stay in the game. And when you see it that way, that pressure to win just disappears, and it becomes all about the process.
Hormozi says the biggest debt we all have is ignorance. I mean, one person does the same work as another but gets paid 100 times more simply because they have a key piece of information. They know which pond to fish in. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What's that critical piece of information you're missing right now that's holding you back from your goals?